Hello, good morning, Poland. It's great to be here, back in Impact again. I was here about 2 years ago. It's really good to be here, other than the fact that it's really cold compared to where I'm from in Singapore. Now, for those who are not familiar with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, we are an integrated regulator in a sense that we regulate anything that touches money. So whether you're a bank, you're an insurance company, you're capital markets, or fintech these days, it comes under the umbrella of MAS. Besides being a regulator, we are also the central bank, and also where I'm from, we are also the one in charge of developing Singapore as a financial center. So the good thing for you, as someone who is looking towards to set up shop in Singapore, you only have one agency to go, which is MAS. Now, so a short description of what we do, and hopefully that will help you to decide whether, when you come to Singapore, who do you look out for? Very simply, Singapore is a very small island. We have about 5.5 million people residing in Singapore. That compared to, say, Poland, that's really a small country. But we are part of the bigger ASEAN members. We are a member state of ASEAN. Together, ASEAN has about 600 million people in that region, together with 9 other member states such as Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam, etc. Although we are small, but we are big in terms of our vision. We want to be a leading global financial center in Asia. In fact, today we are already one of the top financial centers around the world, and we are also one of the top fintech centers around the world. I'll just give you a snapshot of what we are as an ecosystem slightly later on, but today we have close to about 500 fintech companies based in Singapore. And this was a quick growth from where we were in 2015. So back in 2015, we are probably about 70 to 100 fintech companies. So within about 2 to 3 years, it has grown to quite a fair bit to about 500 today. What was the reason why of the growth? I think that was because when in 2015, we started to set ourselves a vision to be a smart financial center. Now, what does a smart financial center means to most of you here? It's not about the latest technology. It's not about the trending technology like blockchain, crypto, and all that. It's really about a meaningful and impactful fintech hub. And our vision is really to see how can we use technology to achieve 4 simple objectives. Number 1, how can we use technology to increase efficiency within the financial services sector? As most of you, especially those from the fintech, would agree that the traditional financial services industry is really, really far behind in terms of the use of technology. While they have been using technology for a long time, but the efficient use of technology is really weak. And this is where we want to see how, as a regulator, as a central bank, and as a market developer, can help the industry to increase efficiency through the use of technology. Number 2, obviously, we want to see how we can use technology to manage risk better. I think over the last 1 day or 2, you already heard quite a number of speakers to showcase their solution using technology to address risk issues such as AML, CFT issues. So we can use technology to manage risk better. And third, how can we use technology within the financial services sector to create more opportunities for people working within and outside the financial services sector? So as one of my role in MAS is really to look at how can we create more jobs within the financial services sector and bringing people who are interested in it back into the financial services sector. And most importantly, the 4th objective links back to our vision as Singapore of building a smart nation, which is really about not the latest, most sexy technology, but really about how can we use technology to improve people's life. Whatever we do, it has to be impactful. Whatever we do, it has to be meaningful. So technology has to be inclusive, and technology has to impact and improve people's life. Whether we are doing payments, whether we are doing blockchain, whatever that we are doing, it has to improve people's life, and that will make fintech, that will make technology meaningful. And how do we intend to achieve that? Quite straightforward. It's really about building 3 layers. Number 1, building the capability in terms of making sure that we have a right research center, we have the right fintech ecosystem to build talents within our ecosystem. And number 2, how can we help our fintech companies to reach out to beyond Singapore? As I mentioned earlier, we are a small country, we only have 5.5 million, but domestic market is not what most companies are looking out for. It is the 600 million that's around Singapore that you should be working towards. But Singapore will be a good starting place with the right with the right regulatory environment for you to excel and exceed what you are doing in Singapore and beyond Singapore. And really, providing the right funding, I think most of you would agree that fintech companies or even a growing tech company will require sufficient funding. As Dan mentioned earlier, just 2 weeks ago where we had our Singapore FinTech Festival where 45,000 people coming through, it's not just about that number of people coming through, but the quality of people coming through is important. So as part of the festival, what we have created is to help our fintech companies to get funding from investors. So through the program, what we call Match, we managed to get $12 billion of funding for our fintech companies over the next 3 years. So if you're looking for money, if you're looking for funding, that's where one place you want to go. And this is where we find it important that we need to work with the industry to bring the right people into the whole ecosystem, which include investors as well. The third layer is about the right infrastructure. I will touch a little bit more about the infrastructure that we have put in place. So I won't go into too much details, which include payments, digital ID, et cetera, et cetera. And last but not least, I think one of the biggest hurdles that a lot of fintech companies are facing is regulatory environment. So we need to make sure that we create a conducive regulatory environment for our fintech companies to grow, not just within the country, but also around the region. And you will hear about what we are doing within the region to bring the different regulators together. Just bear in mind, in ASEAN, we have 10 member states. It means that we have more than 10 regulatory agencies just within the region. While it is easier in Singapore, where you only have one agency to deal with, but in a lot of other places, you have multiple agencies that you need to watch out for. So I mentioned about digital enablers. So what are the different digital enablers that Singapore has put in place to help our technology companies, or especially fintech companies, grow within the region? First of all, and I'll just skip through some of the important ones. The first four is really about a public infrastructure for digital economy. What we have done in Singapore is to create a digital identity, a digital data hub that contain digital identity of every resident that is in Singapore. This is a government public infrastructure where today I can easily open a bank account or any account with anybody that is linked to a system called MyInfo, and people can just open the bank account without stepping out of their house, without having to submit any physical or digital documents simply by tapping on MyInfo. This is an infrastructure that is provided by the government, and it's open to all, not just our financial institutions like bank, but it is open to also fintech companies who wants to open their open their account through the use of MyInfo. So this is very powerful because now you are able to then fully digitize your end-to-end process without the need for paper-based documents. And then, of course, we have data residency consideration, the use of data analytics, the use of artificial intelligence, which we'll discuss slightly later on, is increasing. And how do we then protect and make sure that the use of data is fair, transparent, used under good ethics, and it is used in a fair manner. So this is very important, how we manage data within the country. We also look at different technologies such as cloud computing, open architecture, API. We don't enforce open banking, but many of our financial institutions have already gone ahead and create an open architecture so that they can work very closely with fintech companies. So this is a case where it is a bottom-up approach where our financial institutions saw the benefits of being open, and they are already working very closely with our FinTech ecosystem in Singapore. This is one of the things that we have been doing over the last 2 years, helping our financial institutions to collaborate with fintech companies. And more so, a lot of fintech companies found that a lot better to work with than to just be a challenger in many sense. The last few things, we need talent, obviously. we need to ensure that we have a right regulatory environment, which include the use of sandbox, for example. This is something that is widely used in a lot of different places, but the difference in Singapore is that sandbox is really the last resort. We try as much as possible to build the ability to innovate within the existing regulatory environment, such that you don't really even need to go into a sandbox before you can roll out innovative ideas. And last but not least, it's really about cybersecurity. It is an important factor as we all go digital. We must make sure that there is the right security put in place. And this is one of the things that we have been doing quite a fair bit, including getting the different agencies to set up their cybersecurity centers based out of Singapore. As I mentioned, Singapore is small. Hence, you can't just rely on the domestic market for Singapore. We need global connectivity. This is why we have, over the last few years, worked with multiple agencies to make sure that we are connected globally, which, if you realize, include Poland here. So we have been signing 26 different cooperation agreements with our fellow regulators around the world to see how we can collaborate further in the areas of fintech and how we can help our fintech companies in both countries or cities to come to each other's market. So Singapore companies looking to go to Poland will then work with us, and we will then work with KNF, of course, to see how we can help them to go there. And of course, on the other hand, if a Polish company who is interested in coming to Singapore to set up their business in Singapore, KNF is there to help them. And I'm sure opposite this hall, they have a great booth there. So take your time and visit them if you are intending to set up shop in Singapore. I'll still be around, so I'll be able to sort of help to connect the two together. So there is a lot of collaboration between regulators. I don't know why, I always get the question about, do regulators even talk to each other? Of course we do, it's just that not openly in front of you. So many times we talk to each other, we make sure that we are in sync in terms of certain thinking, but a lot of times regulation will take time for it to shape up in different countries. So if you're interested in looking at expanding from Singapore to various places, we have our cooperation agreements with 26 countries or cities around the world. And last but not least, a quick snapshot of where we are today in Singapore. This is a Singapore FinTech Ecosystem snapshot. The good thing where I'm from, MAS, we are able to look at both the demand and the supply side. The demand for fintech solution and the supply of fintech solutions. We have many levels, including providing grants. We have a financial sector development fund. In 2015, we announced a 225 million Sing dollars, which is equivalent to about 160 million US dollars of fund to help our fintech ecosystem grow. The fund does a few things. If you're fintech companies, you have a very innovative idea and you want to show or you want to do a proof of concept in Singapore, we provide funding for you to do so, as long as you work closely with the financial industry or financial services sector in Singapore. And that's where we can help you to grow, help you to test out new ideas within or even outside of sandbox. It doesn't really matter, as long as it is innovative ideas. So how do we generate, that's how we generate supply of fintech solutions. And how do we generate demand of fintech solution? A few ways. One is we encourage our financial institutions, such as banks, to set up innovation centers in Singapore. So as of today, we have more than 30 innovation centers set up by a lot of financial institutions. But what that means to you is that while Singapore is a small domestic market, if you are working with a financial institution, you are working with them, and your solutions can be deployed wherever they have businesses in. So big financial institutions such as Citibank, HSBC, they all have their innovation labs in Singapore, where they are collaborating with a lot of fintech companies and deploy these solutions in Singapore and outside of Singapore. So working with them is a great idea, and it is how we can create demand for fintech solutions. And last lastly, I want to highlight is that we also work with different agencies such as the UNCDF to see how we can provide increased financial inclusion around the region. As you know, ASEAN is a growing region, and we want to help these different places to have a better access to financial services sector. And the last part I want to highlight is, if you look at the Singapore FinTech ecosystem, you realize that it is a very diverse one. Payment is just one of them, but we have a lot, including wealth management. So if you are interested to expand in Singapore, I'm happy to speak with you further, and I'll be around. Thank you very much, and please connect through LinkedIn or Twitter. Thank you.